Well, President Biden and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy made impassioned speeches at the UN General Assembly yesterday, pleading with the world to keep supporting Ukraine in its fight against Russia. It comes as some Republicans in Congress continue to express doubts about the cost of the war. Weijia Jiang is joining us now from the White House with more on that. Hey, Weijia, let us start with the president's comments on Ukraine yesterday. There's an ongoing sort of battle over funding, continuing to fund the war in Ukraine. A few moments ago on CBS Morning, Secretary of State Antony Blinken commented on lawmakers who are concerned over the potential spending. I want to play some of what the Secretary of State had to say.
I've talked to members of Congress who've gone to Ukraine, and they've seen what we're doing to make sure the money's well accounted for. They come back very impressed with these controls, with these measures. And they've told us that they haven't seen anything as effective in other places in the past where we supported countries who were being the victims of aggression.
So how is the administration's request for more money for Ukraine playing into the government shutdown debate? Because as we know, you can pile a lot of things into those bills.
Well, the White House is hoping that it includes $24 billion of more funding for Ukraine. But the problem, Anne-Marie, is that the criticism is not that the money already spent hasn't been well spent. So it is true that Secretary Blinken named those lawmakers who went to Ukraine and said it appears that obviously this aid is helping. It can also be true that members of Congress and Americans, quite frankly, according to several recent polls, are growing wary of the amount of money that the U.S. is shelling out for this war. Because, the question that many Republicans are asking is, what's the end here? Is this just going to be a, quote, blank check, which is language that they are using? And you're absolutely right. This is part of the conversation as Congress tries to reach an agreement to keep the government open, essentially, which that timeline is ticking and this conversation is ongoing. So I think what will likely happen, but of course, who knows until they actually vote, is that $24 billion figure may come down. But it is difficult to imagine that there won't be any funding for Ukraine.
And, it was interesting with the president's speech yesterday. Yes, the lion's share was about Ukraine, Russia, but he dropped little things here and there, concerns for other countries. He talked a little bit about Haiti and the needs of some developing countries. Can you kind of talk to me a little bit more? Give us some context as to why he would also include some of these points.
So even though it may appear that these have nothing to do with Ukraine and Russia, they are, in fact, all very interconnected. Because if Russia wins this war, they become even stronger on the world stage, right? And who has Russia recently been aligning with? China. In fact, President Putin and Xi Jinping have had multiple meetings now, and they continue to stress their alliance. And so the biggest fear for the U.S. when it comes to foreign policy is that China, the line between competition and conflict is crossed. And so when you're talking about developing countries, what you're really talking about is influence. It's not only in what the president said during his trip to New York, but it's also when you look at a map of where he physically has gone. He just went to Vietnam, India. He will likely go to India again next year. He has promised to go to Africa sometime this year. And these are all places, you also mentioned Haiti, where, China could easily and is already trying to develop and gain influence. So it is all connected. And that is precisely why, Anne-Marie, President Biden has always made China sort of the centerpiece of everything he talks about when it comes to foreign policy.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. He was very careful with the words that he chose when he was talking about China. He talked about not wanting to contain China. While, as you point out, internationally, he's been trying to create alliances that could build up American influence where there are some tensions, where there could be some tensions with China. Can you talk to, I found him sort of tiptoeing into the China talk, if you will.
Yes, and you really have to, Anne-Marie, because the fact is that these two countries, these two superpowers, do in fact need each other as well when it comes to their economic policies, when it comes to leaning on each other in matters of trade and development. We're talking about, astronomical figures of money that are tied up with each other. So the president has always said he wants to compete, and that is very important to him. But he is very concerned about something, he has used language like, something unintentional happening, and then it steps into a conflict, which is obviously something that he wants to avoid and is working to avoid in all of his statements about China, in all of his decisions about China. So you're right. He often has to strike this very firm tone while also acknowledging that they are partners in some way.
Weijia Jiang, thank you.